From that day on, Jethro and Joel were master castle builders. They traveled about the countryside building castles for just about everyone. Since the troll had no use for gold or silver, they were paid with a big sack of turnips, and at that price, even the poorest of families could afford a castle.
1 turnip. Oh, hang on, I don't want to price myself out of the market.
Hello again, and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, and today we are delving into yet another original theory. This one, as the title indicates, regarding specifically a symbolic link between the 3 Dursleys, the 3 Deathly Hallows, and what all 6 of these objects and family members mean to one Harry James Potter throughout the 7 installments of his famous book series. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into this together. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series is replete with complex symbolism, moral undertones, and deeply embedded themes that enrich its coming-of-age narrative. Among the most potent symbols introduced in the latter part of the series are the 3 Deathly Hallows.
So there you are. Those are the Deathly Hallows.
The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak. 3 magical objects said to make their uniter the so-called Master of Death. These 3 relics are traditionally interpreted as representing 3 distinct approaches to death: conquest, denial, and acceptance.
And went with him gladly, departing this life as equals.
However, a deeper layer of meaning can be uncovered when these Hallows are viewed not simply as objects, but as metaphors embodied by 3 key characters within this story. Not just the Peverell brothers, the 3 brothers of the tale that created the stones, but in fact the 3 Dursleys: Vernon, Petunia, and Dudley.
Aren't they wonderful, darling?
How many are there?
36. Counted them myself.
At first glance, the Dursleys, Harry Potter's cruel and misanthropic Muggle relatives, appear to be mere caricatures of middle-class British repression and intolerance in the 1990s. Harry's Uncle Vernon is bombastic, suspicious, and controlling.
Where's my coffee, boy?
His Aunt Petunia is bitter, nosy, and emotionally repressed.
A witch in the family. Isn't it wonderful?
And his cousin Dudley is a spoiled, overfed bully. Yet when we examine Harry's relationships with each of these repugnant familial characters, a curious pattern emerges that mirrors his interactions with the Hallows themselves. Though he is bound to the Dursleys by both literal blood and also Dumbledore's bond of blood charm, Harry never truly desires the quiet, boring, ordinary suburban life that the Dursleys represent, just as he ultimately rejects the awesomely tempting power of the Deathly Hallows. Each of the Dursleys in turn then embodies one of the 3 different Deathly Hallows in spirit and metaphorical representation, their personal desires mirroring a corresponding Hallow's powers. And you will learn which Dursley's desires match up with which Hallow's powers in just a short moment's time. By analyzing these symbolic parallels, we uncover an unexpected truth. The Dursleys are not simply the antithesis of magic, but unexpectedly perfect manifestations of some of its most ancient and powerful artifacts and concepts. In their flawed humanity and emotional arcs, these 3 Muggles serve as a dark mirror to the magical world Harry inhabits, teaching him lessons that are, in the end, just as profound as any he learns at Hogwarts.
I'll be waiting to open the door.
Excellent.
So Death fashioned him one from an elder tree that stood nearby.
Of all the Dursleys, Cousin Dudley is the most immediately antagonistic to Harry. From the earliest chapters of the Philosopher's Stone, Dudley is portrayed as a brutish, gluttonous, mean-spirited boy who uses his physical advantages and parental favoritism to torment the young Harry.
Wake up, cousin! We're going to the zoo! Mummy! Dad, come here! You won't believe what this snake is doing!
He hits our juvenile Mr. Potter more times than are worth mentioning, mocks him relentlessly, and leads gangs of children in schoolyard bullying, mostly bullying Harry specifically. This thirst for dominance, combined with his physical aggression and prowess, positions Dudley as a perfect parallel to the Elder Wand, an artifact whose entire history is tainted by violence, ownership, and conquest, and a ruthless lust for power through the domination of combat. The Elder Wand, otherwise known as the Death Stick, the Wand of Destiny, or the First Hallow, is known as the most powerful wand of all time. A tool of magical concentration that amplifies its master's might evermore the more that one uses it, but that also invites danger, betrayal, and ultimately, and almost certainly, grisly demise. Like the wand's owners, who must constantly duel to maintain control of it, young Dudley Big D Dursley lives in a world where strength equals superiority, where might is right, and where his value is measured by his ability to assert physical dominance. This mindset is not only reinforced by his parents, but by his own development into a boxer, literally someone who fights for glory and recognition in a ring, just as the owners of the Elder Wand must endlessly duel for the right to its mastery.
They're telling him not to counterpunch. Boom!
But what truly completes the symbolism is Dudley's eventual transformation. After being attacked by Dementors in the opening chapters of the Order of the Phoenix, Dudley undergoes an ego death, a complete and utter dissolution of the brash, bullying persona he once wore like a thick plate of armor around his fragile psyche. This traumatic brush with true fear, darkness, and abject desperation changes him irrevocably going forward. He begins to reflect, grows quieter and humbler, and even shows Harry several flickers of genuine care, in particular when he awkwardly expresses concern for his cousin's well-being when they part ways in the Deathly Hallows.
I don't think you're a waste of space.
Thanks.
In this moment, telling Harry that he doesn't think Harry is a waste of space, Dudley dies in the symbolic sense. The old Dudley is gone, and in his place stands a young man on the path to real, tangible emotional maturity. This mirrors the ultimate fate of the Elder Wand in Harry's hands at the end of this very same book. Rather than wield its power as all others have, Harry chooses to return the wand to Dumbledore's tomb, allowing it to lose its luster naturally. Just as Harry rejects the Elder Wand's violent legacy, Dudley sheds the toxicity and entitlement that once both defined and also threatened to destroy him. Through the painful but necessary journey of ego death, both the wand and the boy are disarmed, literally and metaphorically, forever. And Dudley becomes the only Dursley who is able to, by the end of the series, truly change.
You're a little confused, but he got the spirit.
Yes, Aunt Petunia?
I want everything to be perfect.
So Death plucked a stone from the river and offered it to him.
Petunia Dursley is perhaps the most emotionally complex of the three Dursleys, when taking the whole breadth of the series into account. Beneath her harsh exterior lies a woman scarred by loss, rejection, and unfulfilled ambitions. She is the sister of Lily Potter, Harry's mother, a witch Petunia both envied and adored. Like Lily, Petunia would do anything for her one biological son, but sadly, this unconditional adoration does not ever extend to her magical nephew, Harry. Her disdain for magic is not born solely from prejudice, but from the pain of her own exclusion from that world. When Lily was accepted into Hogwarts, Petunia was left behind, as the older sister no less, relegated to the world of muggles, her own letter of admission never arriving, instead in its place merely a kind missive from Dumbledore, letting her down as gently as he could. Her bitterness is deeply rooted in a love unreturned, and a world forever out of her reach. In this way, Petunia represents the second Hallow, the Resurrection Stone. This Hallow, rather than granting power like the wand, promises a sort of reunion with the dead. It appeals to the heartbroken, the bereaved, the haunted, to those forever longing for what has been lost. In the tale of the three brothers, the second brother uses the stone to summon the spirit of a girl he once planned to marry. But when she does appear, she is distant, incomplete, and ultimately unreachable. Unable to live with the pain of her absence, he takes his own life so as to join her in the afterlife. Petunia, too, lives in her own kind of ghost world. She clings with all her mental might to her sister's memory, not by nourishing it, however, but by twisting it into resentment. Every angry word about Lily is really a cry of grief from deep within the well of her endless pain. If the Resurrection Stone brings back loved ones imperfectly, so too does Petunia's life revolve around a false resurrection, keeping the memory of her sister alive in such deep-seated anger rather than in fond and loving affection. She raises Harry, Lily's son, in her own home, but does so with a toxic mix of neglect and outright abuse. And yet, she cannot bring herself to sever the bond entirely. She keeps Harry under her roof, not only out of duty and her fear of Dumbledore, but also because some part of her cannot ever truly let Lily go. Harry is her only remaining tie to her sister or her parents, and so she will always care at least the tiniest bit for him. In a heartbreaking and stupidly deleted scene from the Deathly Hallows Part 1 film, Petunia says in a non-book line of dialogue, "You didn't just lose a mother, you know. I lost a sister."
You didn't just lose a mother that night in Godric's Hollow, you know. I lost a sister.
This line, though cut from the final version of the movie, encapsulates her entire character in two short, simple, heavy sentences. She mourns in silence, her grief turned into cruelty, her love repressed into hatred, unable to ever fully express to her nephew how much she loves him and how much she loved his mother. Just like the second brother with his stone, Petunia cannot truly reunite with her lost loved ones, and just like him, this constant grief destroys her, one day at a time, from the inside.
It's just so sad!
Fine day, Sunday. In my opinion, best day of the week.
And so it was that Death reluctantly handed over his own cloak of invisibility.
At first, it may seem a stretch to link the noble, protective invisibility cloak with the boldly, boisterously bigoted Vernon Dursley. Yet when examined through a symbolic lens, the connection becomes surprisingly apt in many ways. In very many ways, in fact.
In very many ways, in very many ways, in very many ways, in very many ways, in very many ways.
The cloak's primary function is to allow its wearer to move unseen, to hide from the dangers of the world and avoid attention, and to ultimately be concealed from death itself, or so the legend goes. While Harry uses it to uncover secrets and escape threats, Vernon Dursley embodies the darker side of this desire for invisibility and concealment, the desperate need to disappear into societal norms and to make anything abnormal, especially magic, vanish without a trace.
Oh, don't mind that. It's just the cat.
Vernon's life, his entire existence and sense of self, is built on the illusion of normalcy. He values routine, respectability, and predictability above all other perceived virtues. He works a dull, monotonous job at a drill company, lives in a bland, boring suburb in Surrey, and prides himself on being perfectly normal, thank you very much. But this is not mere personal preference. It is a shield, a metaphorical cloak he wraps around himself to avoid confronting anything that might disrupt his carefully composed worldview. When Harry begins to show signs of innate magical ability, just like his parents, Vernon's reaction is not curiosity or even just confusion. It is terror. He attempts to cover it up, deny it, and eventually flee from it. This need for psychological invisibility mirrors the cloak's ability to hide from death. Vernon does not seek power or reunion with the dead like his son or his wife. He simply wants to remain unseen by anything extraordinary and remain untainted by any association with such outlandish and unseemly concepts. His life is a performance of conformity, a constant hiding in plain sight, a painstakingly curated image of utterly ordinary middle-class bliss. Vernon's greatest ambition in life is simply to win a lawn-keeping competition and have a better-looking house and garden than his neighbors, basically. And like the youngest brother in the Hallows tale who evades death for a lifetime by staying hidden, Vernon lives in hiding for his entire adult life from the unknown, the unseen, the uncontrollable, from magic itself.
That's it! We're going away! Far away! Where they can't find us!
Unlike the youngest brother, however, Vernon never greets death, or in his case, magic, like an old friend. He does not embrace the inevitable, but fights it with ever stronger denial and repression. His attempts to silence Harry's identity, boarding up the mail slot, fleeing to a shack in the sea, and insisting that magic is nonsense, are all desperate attempts to keep this cloak of normalcy over his family, shielding them from the truth at all costs. But in doing so, he becomes invisible not only to the magical world, but to emotional reality itself.
Please, with this disguise, I'm invisible.
And now, before we reach our final thoughts and conclusions, it's time for a little smoke break.
Does your present cigarette sometimes taste too strong, too harsh, too rough? Then you should do something about it. Now is the time to change to Kent with the famous Micronite filter.
The last points of comparison I will make between the symbology of Dursleys and Hallows are a couple of observations surrounding gifts. Over the course of Harry's 6 years attending Hogwarts, the Dursleys send Harry 3 gifts for Christmas, 1 gift each in years 1, 2, and 4. In the Chamber of Secrets, they send him a toothpick. This can be obviously taken as a tiny, slightly ridiculous Muggle representation of the eventual Wand of Destiny, the Dudley Dursley Hallow, if you will, the Elder Wand. Now, flashing back to year 1 for a moment, in the Philosopher's Stone, the Dursleys send Harry a 50-pence piece, either from that year, 1991 in the books, or from some earlier year. This, I think, can of course obviously be taken for a visual dupe for the Resurrection Stone, as both the British 50-pence piece and the second Hallow are about the same size and weight, both rounded and smoothed and dark in design, and both bearing visual imagery. The stone bears the iconic symbol of the Deathly Hallows themselves, a larger outer triangle encompassing an inner circle with a single straight line through the middle. The coin Harry receives in year 1, on the other hand, bears on one side the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II in silhouette, wearing a tiara. This feels very symbolically in tune with Voldemort and the Horcruxes, as this sounds awfully similar to a description of Rowena Ravenclaw wearing her legendary diadem, an object that, like the ring that eventually held the Resurrection Stone, was, by the end of this story, turned into one of Voldemort's 6 intentional extra soul containers. On the other side of the coin, in 1991 and until 2008, there sat the image of the goddess Britannia, a representation of the spirit of the nation of Britain, sitting in profile as well, just like the Queen, wearing a flowing robe or gown, sitting down between a lion on one side of her and a shield bearing the Union Jack on the other, and holding in her hands a trident in one and in the other a plant or branch with leaves extending from it, which I believe, if I am not mistaken, is meant to be an olive branch, the representation of a gesture of peace. This side of the coin can be seen as a direct double for the symbol of the Hallows, as the goddess can be seen as Death herself, wearing her cloak of invisibility, with a shield in the form of a circle with a straight line through the middle beside her, wielding a wand in each hand, a trident, the wand of war, and an olive branch, the wand of peace, and literally a stick of wood that could actually be fashioned into a branch by a wand maker, such as Ollivander, Grigorovich, or the oft-forgotten Jimmy Kittle. All of this leads me to say confidently that the 50-pence piece could be meant to represent the Resurrection Stone, the coin becoming what I will now call the Petunia Dursley Hallow. And finally, in the Goblet of Fire, the Dursleys will send Harry their final Christmas gift of the series, a single tissue, perhaps the most comically pitiful of the 3 gifts, and what I will herever after dub the Vernon Dursley Hallow. This, I think, can be seen as rather a silly but no less obvious double for the Cloak of Invisibility, although I doubt this gift gave Harry nearly as much help as the 3rd Hallow that he inherited from his birth father in his first year. Incidentally, also a Christmas gift from Dumbledore himself.
Your father left this in my possession before he died. Use it well.
If I had to rank the Dursley Hallows, I'd say that the best is definitely the Petunia one, the 50-pence piece, and then obviously the toothpick isn't, the worst thing ever. You can use a toothpick, and maybe it's an interesting Muggle artifact to show your wizard friends, so the toothpick is, kind of okay. I kind of like the 50-pence piece. Like, you could buy a lot with the 50-pence piece in 1991. You can definitely get some candy with that or something like that. And, the toothpick is okay. You use it after the candy. And the toothpick, that kind of sucks, but, it's interesting. At least you can show your wizard friends. And then the tissue is just, that's an insult. I don't care how you slice it, that's an insult. And as far as I'm concerned, that's how they picked the gifts. Dudley got to pick the toothpick, and he's like, well, you know what, this is for after Harry eats, because I eat a lot, and I need a lot of toothpicks, so Harry can have one of my toothpicks. And then the next year, Petunia picked the gift, and she does love Harry a little bit, so she was like, you know what, I'm going to go into my coin purse, and I'm going to take out a new 50-pence piece, I'm going to put it in this envelope for Harry, and he's going to get 50 pence, and he can buy with that what he likes. Merry Christmas to 12-year-old Harry. And the 4th year, they were just got kind of lazy, and Vernon picked the gift, and he was like, you know what, I've been blowing my nose a lot lately, and I'll pick a brand new spiffing starched white tissue to give the lad, and I'll stuff that in the envelope, and he can have a tissue. And that's just like, that's a little bit insulting, I'll say, from Vernon. So there you are.
This is the last I'm going to take of you and your nonsense.
Justice.
Speaking of Dumbledore, when I wasn't really, I was just going on a bit of a rant, but I was talking about, in the actual scripts, about the Cloak Hallow being a Christmas gift from Dumbledore. But speaking of Dumbledore, just like he would have, let us for a moment segue and discuss the topic of socks. Returning again to Uncle Vernon's gift-giving in particular, like the tissue, we can assume that Harry receives many of Vernon's old socks throughout his life, as we are told about these old Vernon socks in at least 2 instances, if not many more throughout the series, but 2 that I can remember. Both of these instances are also involving Dobby the house elf in particular. At the end of Book 2, after having visited Vernon's house at the beginning of the year, Dobby is given one of Vernon's old socks by his master Lucius via Harry's trickery. The old black sock still covered in the grime from the Chamber of Secrets. freeing Dobby and becoming his first piece of clothing in his free life. Basically, the most important piece of clothing that Dobby ever receives is the sock that frees him. And it was one of Vernon's. The second time we hear of Vernon's socks that I can recall is in year 4, when, again at Christmas, on the same day that Harry receives the Vernon Dursley Hallow tissue from the Dursleys, Harry also gives Dobby a gift after he forgets to actually buy anything, casting about and giving him one of Vernon's oldest and most horrible pairs of ancient, knobbly yellow socks. And I believe this is the same pair that he wraps around the sneakoscope in year 3 to stop it from whining or something like that. But anyway, yeah, I think that this is the same pair that he wraps around the sneakoscope. So there is another instance of Vernon's socks being mentioned, but it's this same yellow pair of knobbly socks. Dobby is confused by this, as he thinks that socks are meant to be mismatched, and so Ron then gives Dobby a pair of maroon socks, so that he can mismatch the two pairs as he pleases. These old socks of Vernon's are, like the cloak, gifts from his adoptive father Vernon, just as the cloak is from his birth father James, and just like the invisibility cloak, they are items of clothing connected to the Horcruxes, and are present at pivotal moments all throughout Harry's young life. So, while it's insane to compare Vernon Dursley and James Potter in almost any other way, they do give Harry some very important articles of clothing. I wonder if adult Harry still has any of those pairs of socks from Uncle Vernon. I wonder if he treasures them. By interpreting the Dursleys as living embodiments of the Deathly Hallows, and their Christmas gifts as physical representations of them, we unlock a deeper understanding of both the characters and the myth that defines the final arc of the Harry Potter series. Dudley, with his lust for power and eventual transformation, mirrors the Elder Wand's arc from violence to surrender. Petunia, with her buried grief and emotional paralysis, becomes a tragic parallel to the Resurrection Stone's false promise of reunion. Vernon, finally, obsessed with hiding and normalcy, reflects the invisibility cloak's allure of safety through concealment, yet without the wisdom that makes the youngest brother's story so noble. Vernon instead becoming a cautionary figure of ignorance and fear. What makes this allegory particularly poignant is how Harry relates to each of them. He does not desire Dudley's brute strength, but he learns compassion through Dudley's eventual change, partially, just as he rejects the power of the wand. He doesn't like that element of young Dudley, and he ultimately is at peace with that Hallow at the end, just as he is at peace with Dudley. They have gained a mastery over each other through sort of just mutual respect, Harry and Dudley and Harry and the wand. He then does not seek Petunia's denial of grief, but her silent mourning teaches him the pain of unresolved love and the importance of voicing your grief. And, he, once again, doesn't use the stone in the way that probably Petunia would want to use the stone, but he uses the stone in the correct way when he is going to join them, and they are simply ferrying him to the other side for that very brief death that he undergoes. But yes, the stone, once again, he comes to peace with, in a similar way that he comes to peace with Aunt Petunia, where he just accepts her for what she is, and he accepts the stone for what it is, and what it can do and what it cannot do, and he accepts Petunia for what she can say and what she cannot say. And finally, he does not share Vernon's terror of the unknown and the unfamiliar, but instead, through Vernon, he understands the cost of hiding from and repressing the truth. Yes, just like the cloak sort of teaches Harry the importance of when to be seen and when not to be seen. He also reveals himself very dramatically many times in the series, both on purpose and not on purpose, from the cloak, but Vernon shows him the dangers of hiding from what is, just like Fudge does the same for Harry, teaches him that same lesson.
Cornelius, I implore you to see reason.
He's not back.
Just as Harry ultimately chooses to forego mastery of the Three Hallows, he also walks away from the influence of the three Dursleys. And that's it. Next week I'll be back with probably, I hope, the deer for 101 Dalmatians, and so that'll be fun, but I really appreciate you joining me on this slightly different Harry Potter theory again. It's sort of my second foray into Harry Potter theorizing, and so I had a lot of fun with this script. This was sort of a silly little one to put together, but I hope you got some enjoyment out of it, and I certainly had fun making it. So anyway, to wrap it all up, thank you ever so much for watching, and if you're still here, good night, good luck, and...
We've raised you since you were a bedroom, given you the food off our table, even let you have Dudley's second baby.
That's all.